Hello and welcome to the Winging It Travel Podcast. This is a travel podcast where we're having conversations with new guests every Monday. This is an anecdotal, informative podcast for backpackers, travellers or anyone who's interested in travel. It's a casual style where there'll be stories to tell, tips to share and experiences to inspire. My name is James Hammond. I've travelled to 50 countries, done 3 work visas and planning to do a big worldwide trip later this year. I've met so many people on my travels in the last 10 years that I just have to get them on this podcast to get their stories on record and provide some tips for you for your trip. There'll be so much travel content coming your way in the next coming weeks, months and years that inspire you to book that trip that you've always wanted. Stay tuned for my weekly episode. Thanks.
Hello and welcome to Pods Like Us. I'm Martin Quibell, known to my friends as Marv, and at this time I'm speaking with Dylan and Kirsty from the podcast Happy Distraction. Hi guys, thanks for speaking to me. Hope you're okay.
Hello, yes, thanks very much for having us, Marv. Yeah, I'm okay. I don't know about you. Are you okay, Kirsty?
Yeah, not bad. Not bad.
Yeah, I really appreciate you letting us on. And excited to get to know more about you and for you to get to know more about us as well. So,
well, I'm definitely looking forward to getting into the into finding out about yourselves and this relatively new show. Because I think it's only 4 episodes out so far, or has one gone out while I've been off for 2 days?
So the 4 episodes in a kind of a bonus episode. It was launched on the 1st of May, so yeah, pretty brand new ish. Though we put a kind of a trailer out, I think middle of April, so technically, I suppose it's more than a month old.
Did you have shows ready before then? Are you actually doing them week to week?
We kind of bundle recorded the first 4. So we always had those ready to go. But now we're starting to do it week by week to make sure we keep up with kind of current, stories or events or what have you. So
yeah,
I don't want to be too far ahead.
That's true.
It makes sense, really, because to describe your show in a basic way. So you have 5 sections after the intro and then the outro at the end. But you have and it's for the most part, it's to do with things that you're finding online, like a cringe of the week. You'll see something that will make you cringe and think, oh, mm-hmm. And then you have the hashtag crash tag, I think it's called,
mm-hmm.
which anybody on Twitter knows what that's all about. It's these hashtag things where a lot of it you'll have like games, don't you? Like, what is it? Change one name to make this song crap, and then they put it, and then you think, well, actually that song was rubbish before they even changed the title.
Yeah.
And then you have the competition of trying to beat each other with a quiz. Kirsty versus Dylan. Say mm-hmm. What is that something that you find on, and you think no way, or something like that, and then you finish with happy news. So it's all based on what's current and on, for the most part, the social media. So I suppose the closer that you are to release that you record it, it's of that moment. So
the hashtags are mostly kind of old, like old but gold.
Right.
So I think one of them was dog bands or something that Dylan picked. Yeah. And I think he said it was trending back in like 2014.
Wow.
But I think Twitter as a whole has kind of moved back a little bit from that kind of aspect. Like there is still hashtags that go and trend and become viral and what have you, but not in the same way, such as like, as you mentioned, the change a couple of words in a film title or something.
Yeah.
Kind of stepped away from that, but it's something that I quite enjoyed, and as I said, there's some good ones out there.
Yeah, it seems to have Twitter seems to have calmed. Well, I don't know whether saying "calm down" is quite the right phrase to say, considering some of the things that go up on Twitter. It just doesn't seem to be quite so happy a place interactively now as it used to be, where there was this steady stream of people like, having fun on there, and the fun element of a lot of social media has gone down a bit, I think.
Yeah, I would think so too. I think for me, I think it's probably just a little bit of maybe political correctness, and I think people are kind of naturally reining themselves in. And some people aren't. Some of the things that you see are above, beyond that line. But I think for the most part, social media is starting to become more.
I think it's all this trolling over the last couple of years. Trolling's become one and the same with social media, and I think that's pretty much what it's riddled with.
Yes, I would agree with that as well. It's kind of gone from just harmless sort of picking fun at somebody to, kind of a little bit worse and trolling and but at the same, I mean, it's obviously a minority of users, but it tends to, you're right, Marv. Like it's not a happy place anymore, mostly. But it's a difficult one.
Well, Twitter definitely, and I mean even Facebook to a degree. But I think there's some other social networks where it seems to be a bit better. I mean, for the most part, Instagram seems to be a place that's not riddled with that sort of problem. It's got its elements, but not to the same sort of degree as Twitter or Facebook have got.
Yeah,
Kirsty, I don't really touch Instagram. I think I must have, on my personal account, I must have post a picture a year. But Kirsty's kind of she's the Instagram guru, so I really have. I feel like so out of touch when it comes to Instagram.
Well, because like the comments, unless you're going to look through them, it's mainly just pictures. You're just scrolling through and have a look at pictures. So unless you want to go out of your way to look for that kind of thing, it's kind of well hidden, I suppose. I think it's still, as Marv said, happens, but for what I do is I just look at like the stories or the reels, I think they're called.
Yep.
And then just scrolling through like the main feed. You can kind of ignore it.
Yeah, I suppose it could serve as a little bit of a deterrent, really, because I know that Instagram just doesn't let you post something without posting a picture. So that, that might just be kind of an instant barrier to someone who wants to be a troll. It's kind of a bit more effort to go to kind of get a picture as opposed to, just posting a one-line insult on Twitter or something like that,
Yeah, it's the same as TikTok, really. For that, I mean, TikTok, you've got to put a video up or whatever, and you've got to trawl through a load of videos, and that's more of a thing that you have to really want to do or have the time to do, as opposed to a Facebook remark or Twitter post or whatever, where you can just almost like swipe through them, just to go, okay, and it's just there. Whereas a video or a picture, you've got to sort of like purposely want to spend time, like I said, looking at them.
Yeah, I think with TikTok, I've never really actually seen a video on there that's like a trolling video or an insult or something, other than in a form of like a joke. I think most of the trolling tends to happen in comments on other people's videos. So I think for the most part, in my very limited experience anyway, TikTok seems to be, there seems to be less of that going on TikTok. But it's, it's a huge platform, and I can't say I've watched every single video on there. So.
No, I mean, it's relatively new to me. I mean, I've only been doing TikTok for about probably a couple of months or so, and it's still something that I don't really know what's going on there. So it's new. It always seems to be that every so often, you get a new almost a new social network that comes out essentially. So I say that TikTok is the, sort of like the thing at the moment. Whereas, I mean, if you go far enough back, then you go back to MySpace, don't you? And before that, you had all the stupid chat rooms and things. So,
I was a huge fan of MySpace. I think it was just because it was kind of our social media network for when we were growing up.
Yeah.
And it was such a strange concept looking back, because having to kind of edit your profile in HTML and it's kind of, you needed to learn a little bit of code when you were 12-year-old to be able to update your MySpace profile.
I don't mean to interrupt, but Enie's playing up.
Yeah, it's apologies. We have a cat, and if we leave him out of the room, he just cries, and the people underground can hear him.
So a set of headphones, and you can join in.
Yeah.
Oh, he's currently destroying the underneath of the bed, so that's nice.
So if you hear some weird noises, it's just the cat. Sorry about that.
That's why we've got the disclaimer at the beginning, just in case.
I've said before on somebody else's show that they need to start something called a cat cast.
Oh well, Kirsty streams on Twitch, and she normally has, when the cat's kind of up here with us, she normally she has a cat cam. People can normally see it, but it's a good idea for a podcast. We should
and then everybody gets excited in chat, like, "Oh, the cat's here."
That's great. But yeah, you could, if somebody had, you could just have like loads of cats chatting with each other, and then have it playing at home for your cat at home when you leave it at home on its own. It's like company then.
He is partial to cat TV on YouTube and stuff. You've got like hours and hours of not quite Family Guy, but like birds and stuff, like hours and hours of footage of like a bird table, and like the birds come and go and what have you. He was glued to that the other day.
As long as it doesn't try and attack the screen to get to the birds.
Yeah, he does.
Oh, right. Oh.
It's part of the fun.
Tends to be only when we're working, though. He likes to come and interrupt Zoom meetings with 50 other people in there. So that's always fun.
So what's the history of the show then? I mean, what made you decide to actually start doing the show?
Well, this is technically, it isn't our first rodeo, really.
Okay.
Me and Kirsty have done 3 podcasts together. This will be the 3rd, and I've done 4 in total. So I guess I started my journey, if you'd call it that, back in 2008, I believe, when podcasts weren't so mainstream.
Yep.
And run a show called JD Radio. I believe it's still available. And it cropped up the other day, and I listened to an episode, and it was just really cringy. I shouldn't have put myself.
It was really bad.
But because it was back in 2008, it was pretty successful because, they were podcasts were known, but they kind of weren't, everybody from John and Steve to the dog weren't having a podcast of their own, so it was less saturated. And from then on, when me and Kirsty got together, we decided that we wanted to do something similar and kind of have another show. And we created one called Dweecast, which was kind of like a mixture of our names. We thought it was really edgy, but in reality, it wasn't a great name.
You live and you learn.
That's true. Just because nobody understood what it was or what it meant. And that was kind of focused around music. And I think the difficulty was because we didn't have a music license. It was just, kind of copyright free or royalty free music that we're using. And it didn't really hit the right spot, to be honest. And then we moved on to create another podcast, which is quite similar to this one now. Our previous one was called A Game of Two Halves. And it was kind of a magazine style show with different segments. And I think the issue was we had some kind of real life problems go on at the time, and because of that, we lost a level of consistency, and that resulted in kind of, there not being updates for months on end. And rather than just, kind of continue with that one, we decided we'd, create Happy Distraction. I think as well, because the Game of Two Halves, people were confused by the name again, because it kind of referenced football.
Mm-hmm.
And we got a lot of listeners complain that this has nothing to do with football. And imagine that's how they would speak, But so then Happy Distraction was born. So it was kind of, for me anyway, it was a mixture of, being inspired by our own podcast previously, but also current world events. With everything going on around the world, I'm not going to obviously name specifics because nobody wants to be reminded, but I just felt there was a need to produce content that would, help people get through a tough time in their life, maybe. I don't claim that this podcast is the cure-all or anything like that, but I think the aim for me personally, if we can just get one person smiling or, one person distracted, that's the job done, I think. Ultimately, we don't take ourselves too seriously. And we just have fun with it.
Speak for yourself.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realise you were taking it extremely seriously
all the time.
But yeah.
I was going to say, it's definitely one of the pluses for it is the fact that it's a positive show. Hence the name Happy Distraction, and you don't go into things that are a bit too down and a bit morbid or whatever. It's almost like you're trying to build people up and give them like a short bit of happiness for that little bit of time.
Exactly that. Like the Game of Two Halves podcast, as Dylan said, life happened, and part of that was what had happened over the last 2 years, shall we say. Yep. So we did a special sort of series, if you like, Isolate with Us. And that was kind of the building blocks of Happy Distraction. That's exactly what we created it for. And then unfortunately, when world went back to normal, we again lost interest. I have a part-time job, and finally getting back to work after what happened, it was difficult to then manage. So we thought, again, rather than rising the phoenix from the ashes, if you like, we would start afresh and get a new perspective on things like the name.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Kirsty mentioned a point there about losing interest, and I don't think it was a case of losing interest for me. I think it was just that I got so down about the fact that people weren't reacting well to it because they didn't understand the concept, and that was largely down to the choice of name, and the podcast art was just kind of similar to ours now, but it was split down the middle, and it's a little bit. When I look at a podcast and I don't understand the concept by the podcast art, I either tend to listen to it because it intrigues me, or I don't because I don't understand it. And I think that's what a lot of people did with ours, and we got a lot of feedback to say that's the case, and people just not understanding the concept based on the name and the logo, I guess. But so we got our heads together, and I personally feel the name for our show is perfect based on what we do. I don't know about you, Kirsty, if you feel the same, but
well, you would say that you picked the name.
Well, there was ample opportunity for you to complain about it.
Hi, this is Katie of Bad Counsel with some good counsel. You should keep listening to Marv at Pods Like Us.
Did you have plenty of choices for name?
I think Dylan came up with like a list of 4 or 5. I'm not the most creative. So Dylan formulated a few names, and then we bounce them off each other. And that's how we tend to work with anything. Like one of us will come to the table with some sort of suggestion, and rather than just accepting that, we'll sort of go through the options, bounce stuff off each other until we're both happy with what the overall result is.
Yeah, it's normally, I mean, it's normally me that comes to Kirsty with a suggestion, and then she's like, no, absolutely not.
Wow.
That's how it really works, Marv. I'm joking. I'm joking.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I realised you were joking there.
He's just trying to say that just in case he gets in trouble later.
Right. Okay. Making your own dinner tonight. So how did you arrive at the format for the show then, with those 5 different sections? Was that something that was easy to come up with, or was that something that you had to sweat over to work out a format for the show?
So a lot of it came from before. That's why we've got sort of the intros for some and intros not for others, because it's a work in progress. So like hashtag crash tag is pretty much a direct copy from Game of Two Halves. We thought that went down really well with people that we spoke to, listeners and stuff. They really enjoyed it, so we thought that would be a good thing to sort of carry across. And then some of the newer ones that we don't have sort of melodies for, if you like. Again, we just thought about what we would like to hear, what would interest us. Again, Dylan's the heart of the podcast. I'm just kind of the talent, if you like. So he came up with most of them. And we do have other categories that I don't know if we've done very often, or we've got like a rotation, don't we?
Okay. Oh yeah. Yes, we do. I think what we used, the reason for the segments, the reason we've chosen those 4 or 5 to begin with. 2 or 3 of them are kind of new concepts, but the other 2 or 3 are kind of what worked previously. Especially hashtag crash tag. It was always something that was kind of a popular segment. And if we were to receive any feedback, it would be, that was hilarious, or, that was funny, or people suggesting what hashtags to use. So it was important for us to bring that forward, to happy distraction, because it kind of achieves what we want. It's one of the big segments that I don't think we're going to ever kind of, go away from. But there are plenty more segments in the pipeline. So I think eventually the aim is to rotate them in and out, to keep it a little bit fresh, And
then like the underpinning current, if you like, is the Kirsty versus Dylan. So people can join in with the quiz. Like we've had some feedback not too long ago that somebody actually took 3 hours to listen to the quiz. So that they could join in as well, which is lovely to hear. So
yeah,
then we've took that feedback, and now we take the quiz a little bit slower.
Yeah.
To give people a chance to either pause it if they would like to, or to come up with the answer themselves.
Yeah, and I think that's what we want to achieve. It was a lovely comment to receive that they'd taken the time to play along, and that would love for more people to do that. I mean, it's obviously we're not going to appeal to everybody, but it's moments like that kind of make it worthwhile, I think.
Definitely.
So how do you actually, what research do you do then leading up to recording the show? I mean, do you have, you must have like a list of things that you both come up with, I'm guessing, that you go, oh, I like this, I like that. And I mean, do you do that, or is it just, you come in with what you've got and make it up on the spot?
So kind of a combination of both, depending on the circumstances. So again, being a streamer, part of that is having a Discord server. Everybody tells you to set up a Discord server to sort of interact with your community and what have you. So I just thought it would be a good idea to create a second Discord server just privately for me and Dylan for the podcast. So within there, we've got various sections. So we've got like a boatload of happy news. We've got a boatload of say what's. And then we've got individual pieces that we may want to discuss. And then we can either pull something out of the archive if you like, or if there's something that we've come up with either that day or a couple of days ago, then we can bring that to the table as and when. So a bit of a mixture. We've got like a catalogue there just in case we can't think of anything or there's nothing super current. But yeah, just ad hoc really.
Yeah, I think the Discord server is really useful. And I didn't think of doing it until Kirsty, created a separate one. And just because the information is so accessible. And yeah, I think Kirsty touched on a point about there being a catalogue. And I think that's the aim overall, is to have a huge bank of resource to use in future episodes. And it's evolving over time because there's already kind of quite a few segments in there that have content that we haven't released just yet. So I guess at the same time, we're just trying to kind of not go all in at once, because we don't want to kind of, just throw, 10 or 15 concepts at people and then it's going to be hard to swallow immediately. So
we don't want a complete change.
Yeah.
We want like an underpinning theme, but to be able to bring things in and out when times change or whatever.
Yeah, but I've spent days trolling Twitter for hashtags, just to the extent where I wanted to give up, with everything.
Just with everything.
Just everything. Just that's it. Yeah. But yeah, it's being prepared is something that we need to get better at, because there have been a couple of occasions where it has just been on the spot, and that's just because of time constraints, obviously. But
yeah, life.
Yeah, but
that's why we're building up that catalogue.
Yeah. So yeah, we're building that up just to, as I said earlier, to kind of grab from when we need. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't research to the level of kind of archaeology or anything. But
yeah, we've got a few like staple sites and things for things like Happy News. There is sort of sites available already specifically for that kind of thing. So it's quite easy to kind of pull from there, but also you've just got like the general news. Like I tend to open my news app at least once or twice a day, and you can pull and save stuff from there.
Yeah, exactly. I try and save any kind of quirky or unusual sort of weird stories, and then normally see if I can find more about them elsewhere, and just to kind of make sure it's not just one source. So want to kind of tell a story about something that's not real.
I mean, you say you're not sort of being archaeologist in that way, but you did go back 8 years to be able to get the good old Metallica joke out there with the dog bands.
I mean, that is pretty archaeology by today's standards, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose I didn't think of it that way. I guess so then.
So I mean, what made you actually think to go back that far and look for that? I mean, is it easy to find hashtag trends, or I mean, did you really have to search really hard to find these things?
I mean, personally, when I've looked for them, you can kind of just Google funny hashtags, and usually there's like pages of hashtags that are funny, and then you can go and obviously type them into Twitter, tweets stay forever, and then sort of cross-reference from that. But I don't personally know what Dylan did. That's just what I've done when I've been lazy.
I think the dog bands one in particular was found on the off chance. I think I saw it was actually the Metallica one that came up, and I was curious as to what it referred to. And then I clicked into the view, whatever it says, view tweet history or whatever it says on there, and then found that it was in relation to hashtag dog bans, and then popped hashtag dog bans into Twitter to get the rest. So that one was purely by chance, and that was just because somebody had recently tweeted about it. But it was originally trending in whenever it was, 8 years ago. Yeah. But we recently recorded a kind of a Jubilee edition, which is coming out on the 2nd of June.
Yeah.
And with that one, that was just me entering a combination of British kind of hashtags. We were with the word British in. So it's not really anything to write home about, but that from that I found 2 hashtags, hashtag very British problems and hashtag being British. So yeah, it's kind of trial and error really. Sometimes you don't necessarily have to have the full hashtag in there for it to relate to the hashtag, if that makes sense. But surprisingly, it's quite easy to view tweets and hashtags from that long ago. It's quite a good, they have quite a good kind of archive of tweets, I guess.
Yeah, unfortunately for people like James Gunn.
I can imagine so.
Yes. Yeah, that didn't, well, it still worked out for him. I mean, he's got his career and everything still.
Yeah. I think it's happened to a lot of people. Previous tweets coming back to haunt them.
Yeah. Definitely.
But but if you're a former, president of America, then it's film clips as well that you accidentally say things that you shouldn't really have said.
Oh well, that, and also just create your own social media, as well.
Yeah. Or buy your own social media network, of course. Elon Musk.
Oh yeah.
Well, this is it, to protect free speech.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes. So we've already gone into this before we started officially the show, and now you're going to have to reiterate it again. So how do you actually record and then edit the show together?
So at the moment we have 2 Rode Pod mics that's connected to our interface, which is a Scarlett Focusrite 2i2 interface, which is, I guess, I think it's probably the most popular interface amongst podcasters. And we use a program called OBS to record our audio, which is kind of a gaming designed for a streaming, kind of audience for Twitch or YouTube gaming or something like that. The reason we chose to use OBS is just because it has a built-in noise suppression filter, which is kind of temperamental, to be honest, but when it works, it does work really well.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to, play about with noise reduction in post-production or anything like that. We do have some difficulties with it though, because it only saves the output file in a .mkv format. And then Kirsty has to kind of magically convert it to an MP3.
This is the most tech wizard thing I've ever done.
And I think that uses I don't know what to call it, like a program or a plugin called FFmpeg, and it converts files. Kirsty does that anyway. I don't know what she does. And we also, because Kirsty streams, she has an Elgato Stream Deck, which we use as a soundboard. And that kind of connects to OBS without, through the computer rather than through the interface. So it was just handy for us to kind of have an all-in-one package instead of having to edit sounds and other things in post-production. So the way it works is there's very little touching up that I need to do in when I edit the output file. But everything's edited in Audacity once I have the MP3 or the WAV file or WAV file. I don't know what people refer to it as. And And then it's just a case of kind of removing any excess kind of R's or ers or ms, and removing any kind of awkward silences and things like that. I think
and bits where you can't stop laughing for minutes on end.
yeah, that happens a lot. And I think it takes probably a couple of minutes per minute of audio to edit, just to kind of get it where I want it. And I also like to leave quite a few of the ums and the ahs in, just because we have a
more natural.
Yeah, we have a completely unscripted show, other than, you know, kind of a rough guide of what we're going to be covering. And I've tried it in the past where I've removed them, and it just doesn't always sound natural. So remove any excessive ones, but kind of keep them in so people know we're human, you know.
I'm Agent Scott.
And I'm Cam the Provocateur.
And we're from the Spy Hards podcast.
That's right, and you are listening to Pods Like Us, the podcast that also has the Midas touch.
So do you both know exactly what subjects you're going to discuss then before the show? It's not a case of one of you brings something and the other one doesn't know what it is. You do just, you know what you're talking about.
No, so the stuff that Dylan talks about, I don't know about. The stuff that I talk about, Dylan doesn't know about.
Wow.
But we both individually have an idea of what we're going to talk about. We just don't discuss it. So our reactions to the situation
are natural.
Yeah.
And that's important for us, because we want it to be a genuine, you know, natural podcast, without any, you know, kind of, you know, we don't want to kind of act the part. We want it to be all general reaction. And the way we go on in the podcast is, to be honest, is the way we go on with each other in real life. We're always mocking each other and tearing each other's hair out. And it's nothing more than just an extension of our actual real life, really.
Absolutely. And I think Dylan's very first podcast was literally scripted word for word.
Oh, it was, yeah.
And that's why when I said it was awful, it was because you could tell, like, it wasn't Dylan. It was very much, you could tell that they were reading from something and the emphasis was in certain places. So I always feel awkward when we do the happy news part, because that is pretty much reading. I try and write it out in my own words and like paraphrase a lot, but that's the only part that's really scripted in any way. Everything else is just whatever we want to say.
Yeah.
Well, that's I'm going to have to get rid of that lip smack from the recording now. But that's you know, it's natural, like I said, but it's something about podcast where you know, there's a lot of podcasts where it's the same thing for multiple. So you'll find so many podcasts that are about the same sort of thing-ish, but it's that individual personality or the personalities of the people that are doing the podcast that essentially keeps you listening to that podcast continually after that. You know, it's what gets you, for want of a better phrase, although I do use it sometimes in promotion, it's what gets you addicted to those shows and makes you listen to them. It's about the people that are doing the shows. Everything else, yep, you're listening to the show because that's what you want to listen to. But like I said, it's the people that are doing the shows that keeps you listening.
Yeah. Excuse me. I would agree, absolutely. And I think that's probably the case with us. I think the content, while we try to make it funny and, you know, kind of accessible, I think it's probably our kind of personalities, what people listen for. And I think the segments and things are a bonus. That's from my impression of what people have said anyway. I could be completely wrong. But yeah, no, you're right. It is definitely, if somebody is talking about a topic that I, of interest, of course the topic is going to interest me. But if they have something about them, if they have a unique personality or they're memorable, that's definitely more than likely going to get me to listen to multiple episodes as opposed to just one of them because they're talking about a topic I like.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Absolutely. I think on a multi-person podcast as well, it's all about the chemistry.
Yep.
The individuals you can like, but if the chemistry isn't quite right or it doesn't quite flow as it should, then that makes it quite difficult. It's finding that balance of everything.
Then what you've chosen to do, to have for the format of the show, that's an extension of yourselves anyway, because it sounds like to me when I've listened, it sounds like these are things that in your normal, us time, as me and my other half call it, the time that you normally have together, it sounds like they would be the things that you'd say talk to each other about anyway, where one of you turns to the other and say, oh, have you seen this? And then you'll have a laugh about it and a chat about it. So it seems almost like a natural extension of what your personality is to have those subjects that you talk about.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. Like part of our us time is I love TikTok, obsessed.
Yep.
And I will save a ream of videos. I'll send them to Dylan. He never checks TikTok.
Yep.
So then when we in bed about go to sleep or whatever, we'll watch TikToks for like 20 minutes, half an hour, binge watch all of the TikToks I've sent him in the last month, and just laugh or cringe. So it's absolutely an extension of us.
Yeah, it is. And I that's exactly, I love the fact that you've mentioned that and you picked that up. That's exactly what we wanted to get across, is that it's completely just us. We're not kind of acting or emphasizing certain ways that we talk to each other. It's all genuine. So yeah, thank you for picking that up. It's really nice to hear, actually.
Yeah, I picked that up because we're pretty much the same at home ourselves with those things. So I pick up on when people are similar.
Yeah.
So when you do edit the show or when you record the show, is the music that you use in the show, is that put on in post in actual production after you've recorded, or do you do it all including the music live?
It's all on the Stream Deck. So that is our moment to compose ourselves. When the intro is playing, we mute our microphones and like get all of our laughter out and then start the show. The happy music that we play, that is during. So I think there was was it the Jubilee one that we did? Dylan literally complained because it was too short. The music went longer. And he complained at me, and I'm like, well, I'm sorry, I didn't time it.
And I said, well, we're just going to have to hum this tune now until it's over, because
I was like, you just press the button and it'll stop. God.
Technical issues.
That's kind of with the exception of the introduction and the outro. That is, the music is. We got somebody to record that for us, and I edit the music in. But yeah, we use a soundboard in live recording to get all of the sounds in there. And the happy news at the end, that's the most difficult thing to edit, because if you edit out something, yourself a disservice. So maybe maybe that one needs to go into post-production so I can edit.
And get the levels right as well, probably.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You need to get that person now to do you some funky music to go with the say what section now. So you can have them doing some funky bass and at the end go, say what?
I know. They were quite cool. We had them done for Game of Two Halves.
Yep.
And I loved it.
Yeah, we it's a website. I think it's called Radio Jingles VIP, and I've used them since 2000. Since GD Radio, the 2008 podcast. And that you give them kind of what the segment is, and they record. I give them complete creative control to record it, and it always comes out great. So yeah, but yeah, we do need more more jingles for segments, because sometimes a little bit random that some have, some and some don't.
Yes.
And if you do that, you'd have your own Seinfeld moment then, wouldn't you, with the funky bass bit?
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody knows that one. So was it one of you two that came up with the logo of the cartoonized versions of yourselves? I mean, even that works. The coloring's perfect. The dice, the smiley faces, and everything.
So this was the initially the logo was created just by a real life picture of us. So we give it to an artist on Fiverr, I think, and they created the kind of pop art style, cartoon style image for us. And they sent us the source file in Photoshop, and then it was just a case of trying to find the right font and the right kind of background images. The dice and the question marks, and then so it's evolved over time. It was the same one that was used all the way back from Dweecast, just in various different formats. But yeah, initially it was an artist on Fiverr who recreated it digitally for us.
The current composition is all Dylan. So all the different colorings, the dice that he's found, the exclamation marks, question marks, he put that all together.
Okay. And I mean, are they very good likenesses of yourselves as well? Because it's very good, the pictures.
Just Dylan's eyes.
Yeah, I my eyes are kind of a greyish color in real life, and on that picture they're brown. And if you look close enough, you'll see that some have grey eyes and some have brown, because I keep forgetting to save the grey-eyed version. So apart from my eye color changing every so often, it's a good likeness.
Yeah. So I'm just saving that picture now. I'm going to use it because I was just looking at it online. There you go. Doing my research.
This is Dave of Live Life Loud, the Decibelic podcast, and you're listening to Pods Like Us with Marv.
So we've already talked about the different sections, the social media connection. And so, I mean, you think you're onto a formula now that you're going to stick with, or do you think that you're going to grow over time or change over time?
I think the underpinning parts are going to stay the same. And I don't think there's going to be a huge change from episode to episode. I think the plan is the segments that we have come up with, we're just going to slot in and sort of change. So there's just a bit more variety, that's all.
Yeah.
So like Say What and Cringe of the Week can sometimes be interchangeable depending on the way that you've interpreted some of the stories. So we thought that it might be good to mix that up every so often with a different type of segment, to bring sort of a different aspect, but without changing the overall formula. So like Dylan said before, we don't want to completely change everything, but we want to make sure that it's still feeling fresh and that there's aspects to keep coming back for. So if maybe Cringe of the Week's not your favourite part, but one of these new ones that we've got in the works is better, it's still worth listening in and seeing, are they going to do this segment this time?
Yeah.
And obviously keeping the underpinning Kirsty versus Dylan. And also, I think #hashtag is going to be always in it. I can't see that not. So
yeah, absolutely. At this time, I've been conscious to create chapter markers for the episode and split the segments into chapters. Not that every podcast listening platform allows you to, skip between chapters, but some do, and it's the reason I've done that is because even though, you know, the title of the episode is like season 1, episode 1, what have you, it's not really episodic. You can kind of jump in anytime you want. And the reason for the chapter markers is so if there is a particular segment that, you know, is more favorable, they can listen to that and, you know, listen to their favorite ones. And that also, you know, gives me information in terms of analytics to see what works and what doesn't. And that's why #CrashTag is the most popular segment of ours. But yeah, as Kirsty said, we've got quite a few in the pipeline. But in terms of kind of growth overall, I don't really think we have a solid plan for growth. I think the reason for that is I think we're acutely aware that our podcast doesn't really have a niche. And we try to have kind of a little bit of something for everyone. So because of that, it kind of creates an awareness that we are probably going to, you know, growth is going to be a little bit slower for us because our subjects can be broad, and whereas we have an overall target in terms of, you know, distracting people and making people smile, the content isn't necessarily narrowed down enough for, you know, kind of diehard podcast fans. But we're not in it to, you know, monetize or anything. Like, it's something that would be great at some point, of course, but it's just a hobby for now. You know, it's it isn't something that we're taking too seriously because it's something that we're kind of in the right mindset now to focus on it and be consistent.
Absolutely.
And real life kind of seems to be going quite well for a change. So we hope this one's going to be. I think
also as well, like outside of the show growth, we have a slightly bigger personal sort of stance on social media. So through not to keep plugging my Twitch, but from building the community that I have on Twitch, Dylan's been a part of that from day one. I've been doing that for like 2 years now. And a lot of the people who support us over there have loved the podcast and give us glowing feedback, and love that Dylan's sort of involved a little bit more in that aspect to see our like chemistry and stuff. So I think potentially if Twitch keeps going the same way, naturally it may come across. Obviously, a lot of people on Twitch like to watch live gaming content, that kind of stuff. Yep. But we also previously, before we started Happy Distraction, did do a few live episodes of Game of Two Halves that did go down quite well. Probably not the more popular streams, but more popular than what I thought a live podcast would be.
Yeah, it was also difficult to kind of take an audio only show and make it visual. And that's probably part of the reason why they weren't received as well as, you know, your gaming kind of videos. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely helped having a Twitch. I mean, you know, Kirsty doesn't have hundreds of thousands of people on Twitch, but a very small kind of niche community, and it's definitely helped to leverage that. It's definitely our most successful kind of launch of a show. We were lucky if we had 10, 15, 20 downloads in the first month of Game of Two Halves. And we have close to 150 in less than a month. And it's not huge. It certainly could be better, but it certainly could be a lot worse. So I think Twitch has definitely helped with that level of kind of launch growth, if you like.
Absolutely.
It's not the first case of a podcast doing that, because I mean, Comic Book Nation, they do a live Twitch stream of their show, and then after they've done that, that goes out as an actual audio podcast or video podcast on YouTube as well. So it's
Yeah.
something to look into as a possibility. I mean, I've wondered about that for myself as well.
Yeah.
There is a podcasting section, and I know of other people now who are part of the community who have done very successful podcasting shows, and they used to do it every week I say very successful in my niche. They got partnerships, so an average of sort of 75 views consistently, and I think it's meant to be a 30-day period, so potentially 70 odd people, maybe more, used to listen to their show every Saturday live. I think they've took a break from that now, but there's definitely scope for it. People do enjoy it.
Yeah.
I think the nature of our show, it didn't really work. I think Dylan felt quite awkward. He's not very, doesn't have great camera skills, shall we say?
Yeah, cameras. Yeah, no, I'm not a camera person.
But for yourselves, for your show, thinking about it, it would seem a bit strange in a way, because the thing about the Twitch, the live streaming of it all would be that the interactivity, that would be the bonus to that. But for yourselves, your show is about, a discussion between the two of you. So to add that to the mix would change the whole aesthetic of the show itself.
Yeah, we changed the quiz aspect. So rather than it being Kirsty versus Dylan, we did like a general quiz for chat to join in. Yeah. That was our interactivity part of it. But yeah, the format that we've got that we think works quite nicely, I don't think is adaptable in the current state anyway for Twitch streaming. I think that's why we only did a few.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it is only, I mean, there are segments that are more interactive that are coming later on that have, calls to action associated with it. But the reason we're keeping those for a bit later on is just because engagement in terms of social media and things isn't quite where we want it to be. So it's not really the best time now to have sort of, calls to action or interactivity outside of listening.
Yeah, we don't want to try and do a segment and have nothing to pull from.
Yeah. So we understand that we need to kind of grow a little bit more before people are going to kind of interact with us a little bit more.
Do what we tell them.
Yeah, I mean, here I come with my not being prepared enough here. I was actually going online and looking for things to discuss, things of the moment, like trends and that. And it doesn't seem to be quite good at the moment, because the only thing I can seem to come up with at the moment doesn't really work, which is I keep getting people telling me, there's a new, they're doing Winnie the Pooh as a horror movie.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
Oh. And it doesn't really fit.
It looks terrifying.
It does. And
I'll show you later, Dylan.
Yeah. The only thing that makes me think about is, what other mashups could you do, in that sort of thing? If you're going to have a horror version of a Winnie the Pooh film, I mean, what else could you have?
I mean, most animated films could be translated to some sort of horror film.
Yeah, Finding Nemo, definitely.
Characters.
Yeah.
I think on that point, actually, I don't know if you have heard of Mystery Incorporated, who are a YouTube-based film studio, I guess, and they've recreated Scooby-Doo into a live-action kind of more kind of dark Scooby-Doo type episode. I'm not describing this very well, but I've watched the first episode and it's actually really good. So there's things like that that's cropping up. It tends to be older, kind of more successful shows that are being recreated these days, but a lot of indie filmmakers and things are doing them as well, which is always good to see. But I would recommend Mystery Incorporated if you're a fan of Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
Much of a fan is Dylan.
Yeah. I've got the DVD set, so yeah, it must be.
See, so it's right up your street.
Absolutely, but I mean, there you've pulled onto something, going on a tangent. Video. I mean, there's a lot of interesting and really creative online video creators. I'm friends with Rachel, who's behind the video stream of Launder Cat, it's called, where she plays all the characters, the boyfriend and the girlfriend, and then she also plays the psychologist now, or psychiatrist, that's having the discussions. And she's incredibly inventive with how she creates situations, and then they have animated bits as well that she puts in there. And there's a creativity online now that's just fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, there definitely is. It really surprises me, some of the content that I see. Even things like stop motion animation, and just there's so much out there that's mind-bogglingly creative that I couldn't even begin to fathom.
Anytime I see any stop motion, I just think you must have the patience of a saint, because I could not be bothered.
Yeah. Shout out to Justin Rash, who's an online stop motion video maker. His work is incredible. I've linked him to the official Ray Harryhausen estate to be in discussion, because his work reminds me of those old Ray Harryhausen films and all that stop motion film. It's incredible.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend to know what that is. No, but stop. Yeah, just in general, I think it's absolutely incredible how because it's definitely, can't imagine it being easy.
It's so time consuming.
Yeah, just my hat goes off to anybody who can create something good from bits of plasticine or whatever,
Ray Harryhausen is the chap behind the original Clash of the Titans and Jason and the Argonauts and Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger and those films.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes. My mum loved Jason and the Argonauts.
So, hey, this is Tim from Bad Counsel. You want some good counsel? Keep listening to the smooth, dulcet tones of Marv on Pods Like Us.
So what advice would you give to people starting their own podcast?
I mean, for me, I think everybody says this, so it's a bit cliche. I apologize. Just do it.
Yeah.
If it's something that you want to do, you might as well start. But I think as practical advice, obviously the most important thing with a podcast is the audio quality, really. You can speak about pretty much anything. You'll probably find a niche. Make sure that your content is decent, but nobody's going to want to listen to it if your audio quality is all over the place, or at least not for long periods of time.
Yeah. You can get away with snippet for a show like us, which is unscripted, and it's not as if we have bad audio we can re-record when we can, but not in this, it would then not be natural.
The
same. So there has been occasions where I've sacrificed audio because of good quality content, but it's not for a long period of time. It's just for a short snippet, maybe 10 or 15 seconds of some weird background noise or something.
The cat meowing noise.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. But yeah, for me, obviously, I don't claim to be kind of an expert or anything in any way, shape, or form. But the most important thing for me is to kind of not obsess over, download numbers or listener numbers. I read an article the other day that said if your episode gets something like 9,000 downloads in its first 30 days, That puts you at the top of 5% of all podcasts. And the average podcast gets 141 downloads in its first 30 days. So where we're at right now, I think we're at 138 downloads in 24-ish days. So we're right on track to be, just an average podcast, and that's completely okay. Of course, I'd like that to be more, but Rome wasn't built in a day. So even though I'm a little bit guilty of it myself, just not obsessing over numbers. I think of it as, if you want to be something like a top 20% or a top 30% podcast, you only probably need somewhere around, 750 or 1,000 downloads per episode. And I don't think that's too unachievable. I think that's probably going to take you a little while to get there as an indie podcaster, but I don't think it's a certain, an immediate barrier to, to being a top 20% or whatever podcast. And I would also say that go into podcasting for the right reason. If you're going to podcasting for something like, monetization, if you only want to make money from it, you'll probably quickly come to realize that it isn't so easy. Unless you're like a celebrity or a public figure or somebody like that, huge amounts of money immediately. But for me personally, I wouldn't even start monetizing until you were more established. Maybe after 6 months or something, if you can, if you have consistent numbers, and then maybe start small by, introducing like a buy me a coffee type of thing, for like £5, or, a couple of pounds, whatever it is. I'm not sure. But I would use that over running ads in your podcast. Because if you have a show that's quite getting well established, and you all of a sudden change the format and you have an advert at the beginning, middle, and end, people are going to kind of react to that in a way of, this is not what I signed up for. Everybody hates ads, so little baby steps, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. We haven't ever got to a position where we can monetize a podcast, and that's absolutely fine, because we're not doing it for that. But if we were to, it would be like buy me a £2 coffee or whatever. And yeah, just lastly on what Kirsty said, audio quality is really important. I think everybody would kind of agree that that's probably should be the main focal point of your podcast. And if you are somebody who's maybe on a budget, or you have fans, or sirens or something in the background, or some sort of weird hum from your fridge or something, or whatever, then the best bit of advice I can give is just to record under a thick duvet or a blanket or something, because it's not going to kind of remove everything, but it's going to give your podcast a little bit of an audio boost. And then I would use a service. We use Auphonic, which is a semi-free service in terms of you get 2 free hours per month. Run your final edited audio through that, and it corrects all the levels for you. And it makes your podcast sound more professional without it costing a fortune. So those would be my tips, really.
Yeah, and going back to mine, I don't mean spending a fortune, but just investing in the best quality sort of stuff that you can. Yeah. And then if not, YouTube's your best friend. Like, Google how to get the best settings for the equipment that you have. Play with it, record with it, listen to it back. Would you listen to that audio for an hour, 2 hours? Making sure that it's listenable.
Yeah, I think the common issue that I tend to find is that when there's multiple hosts on a podcast, people who are not so audio savvy, you tend to have one person in the right and one person in the left, and that's so distracting. Yeah. So just little things like that can be tweaked. It's obviously just something that you can I mean, I wouldn't know how to do it because we use OBS for recording, but I'd imagine it's fairly...
It's just a track thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I imagine it's fairly okay to do in something like Audacity. But yeah, YouTube it. That's
Google and YouTube are your friends.
Yes, they are. Yeah. They're not just for finding things that you shouldn't be looking at.
Exactly.
So what other podcasts do you actually listen to yourselves?
So I'm quite guilty at not listening to a great deal.
Yep.
I currently work from home for the most part. And then other life things take a lot of focus, and then streaming as well, which is basically another part-time job.
Yeah.
It monopolizes quite a lot of my time, but I have been listening to a podcast on my way to work. We now have like a day in office every week. So I listen to a podcast on the way there because it takes me about an hour. Unfortunately, it's not an indie podcast.
Okay.
But it's called Distractable. I've been a fan of Markiplier for a long time. And I particularly enjoy the chemistry that he has with two of his friends, Bob and Wade, which is who he hosts the podcast with. So it was just basically an extension from the YouTube videos because I spend a lot of my free time watching YouTube. That's pretty much what I've always done. So basically being able to leave the house and listen to them have a bit of banter, that's pretty much been what I've been listening to. I know that obviously since getting in touch with you and also a few other indie podcast makers, Dylan's pointed out quite a few podcasts that I should probably listen to because I love true crime.
Yeah.
I love just like things along the same vein as us, just having a chat, just having a general bit of lighthearted chat as well. Like it's very, very dramatic true crime to lighthearted nothingness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got a few on my list to review. But that's pretty much all I listen to be honest.
Yeah. I think for me, there's this really great new podcast that just came out called Happy Distraction.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
I didn't even think about that.
No, for me, I don't tend to listen to a podcast more than once, and that's kind of a little bit bad, I guess. There's only really been a handful of podcasts that have, as we said earlier, like kind of grabbed my attention. I normally just listen to podcasts that are a particular topic that I'm wanting to listen to that particular day. But I think that's kind of the beauty of podcasts because you don't really necessarily have to religiously listen to every episode, especially with an educational podcast because it's you can just dip in and dip out. Yeah. But there was one podcast that I did listen to religiously, and it was called Beyond the Box Set. And their kind of premise was they would take like a standalone movie franchise and basically like pitch an idea for a sequel or a prequel. And it was just some of the ideas were just absolutely ridiculous and hilarious. But they just announced in January that they're sort of shutting up shop after 5 years and 250 episodes. So I'm going to need to find something else now.
Let's make a sci-fi. That's an interesting one that started recently, where it's just three people who are comedians by career. That's what they do. And they just thought, it must be really easy to make a sci-fi film. So they're trying to come up with a way to make a film and a story and everything. So that's an interesting thing that's different, I suppose.
Yeah, that's exactly the type of thing that I like. Just the kind of taking something that's like a well-loved medium like a movie and just putting a ridiculous spin on it. Yeah, that's definitely right up my street.
So where can people find you and get hold of you?
So I think basically everywhere other than Pandora, we're still waiting to hear from Pandora. But I think where I would love people to listen to from is probably directly on our website. Just because it's been something that I've been slowly building since probably the start of April. And it's finally at a point now where I think it's good. I think it's interactive enough. And, it has extra bits of information on there, like some transcripts that we're trying to slowly put together.
That's a dig at me.
Because Kirsty's not pulling that weight. But, just little kind of unique elements that relates to the show. Like there's a page on there where you can track the scores in the Kirsty versus Dylan segment. Just to kind of adds another element to our podcast. And there's also a blog that we're really bad at not updating, but we're going to focus on that a little bit more. But yeah, just everywhere really, Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere you find podcasts. So just in all good podcast players, I guess.
And social media.
And of course, social media, yes.
We've got a Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok.
There's nothing on the TikTok, though.
Rude.
I don't know. But the website, by the way, to people is happydistraction.co.uk.
Yes.
You're normally good at saying that.
I know, but...
Slacking.
Cut you out, you see. It's not your normal recording day.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is it.
He's not in show mode.
Exactly.
He's not got the outfit on. He's not got the waving hands and everything, the jazz hands and everything.
But he's got the pink kitten ears on.
The headphones.
Yeah. I'm missing that from not seeing the video, but there you go. I'll just imagine it.
It's one of the Raisin Kitty headsets. The desk setup is my streaming desk, basically.
I'm glad I
can't wear my headphones.
Yeah. I'm glad I can't see the tutu that he's got on though. I mean that
yeah.
No, don't want that at all.
I mean, it's a bit much.
It is. You're dressing up to talk to me. I don't know.
I mean, it's it's good. I can't recommend it enough.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Takes you out your comfort zone, I suppose, occasionally. Thanks for talking with me today, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much again for having us. It's been really nice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can find Pods Like Us on all social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Anyway, thank you everyone for listening, and hope you listen again to another episode of Pods Like Us.